अब आप लोग लाइव है।
ठीक है।
Very good evening, my dear viewers. I very much welcome all of you, those who are logged in from abroad and those who are viewing our program, of Education Pe Charcha from across the nation. I greet you on this very, very special occasion, my dear viewers, which happens to be the 95th session on Education Pe Charcha. My dear viewers, as all of you know, this is Vivekanand, an author, academician, and public intellectual, the convener of Education Pe Charcha. Education Pe Charcha, in fact, is conducted under the aegis of Drishti Talks, which is spearheaded by Sri Pramodji, who also happens to be a valued partner as well as a technical collaborator. My dear viewers, as I already informed all of you, we are really delighted at the prospect of conducting this 95th session, and that too a very, very special session, my dear viewers, on great constitutional jurist, in fact the greatest constitutional jurist the nation had ever produced, Sri Nani A. Palkiwala, happens to be today's very, very object of discussion. My dear viewers, you all would we reckon with the fact that just preceding two sessions we have already had, wherein we had already discussed two of India's greatest icons, in fact Raison d'etre and Summum Bonum of Bharat Varsha. We began with great Adi Sarkacharya, wherein we had the privilege of inviting one of the topmost lawyers of Supreme Court, who did all throughout his life an extensive and exhaustive research on great Adi Sankaracharya, Sri M.N. Misraji. Later, we had invited, His Holiness Swami Atmapriyanandaji Maharaj, the Vice Chancellor of Swami Vivekananda University of Belur, to discuss on Swami Vivekananda. My dear viewers, we also have discussions on the Hindenburg Report, and today, by another great indeed, which I believe in the name of God is going to be a highly intellectually scintillating session on this, on our comprehensive discussion on great, Nani A. Palkiwala. My dear viewers, of course, we are so very glad and we express our gratitude to our today's very, very distinguished and esteemed guest, respected Major General Sahab, Sri NILENDRA Kumarji, for having given his very, very benign acquiescence to be our esteemed guest today. My dear viewers, with Sri Nani A. Palkiwala, I do have my personal, memory to share with you before our question and answer session shall begin. In my boyhood days in Calcutta, then Calcutta, today it is Kolkata, great Nani A. Palkiwala would visit, to Netaji Indoor Stadium to deliver his speech in the wake of Union Budget. And we would flock to hear him, and just an anonymous spectator among tens of thousands, I would just visit to take a look at the giant, intellectual giant called Sri Nani A. Palkiwala. My dear viewers, I seldom knew then that one day I would graduate into that particular stage where I would have the privilege of discussing on him, and that too, a certain expert, the global expert on Sri Nani A. Palkiwala, respected Major General Sahab, Sri NILENDRA Kumarji, who has already written two very, very famous books on great Nani A. Palkiwala. One of the books he wrote, another he edited. The book he wrote, Bemisal Palkiwala. The book he edited is, Rethinking Palkiwala. My dear viewers, of course, as our question answer session will progress, and definitely we'll be able to unravel about the holistic personality of the great constitutional jurist. Since 10 questions are to be accommodated, time is very short. Straightway, I welcome, Sri Major General Sri NILENDRA Kumarji with his very first question. Sir, we very much welcome you on this august platform of Education Pe Charcha with this very, very first question, as it goes in this way, sir. With the Golden Jubilee commemoration of Keshavanand Bharati versus State of Kerala coinciding this year 2023, how, with the benefits of hindsight, you feel its relevance then and now. Sir, your take on this, please. We welcome Sri Nilendra, Major General Sri Nilendra Kumar ji. Yes, sir, your take on this.
Thank you, Vivekanand ji. I hope you can hear me right.
Yes, sir. Right.
To begin with, I would like to offer my profuse thanks to you for inviting me for this 95th session on education at Charcha. You have spoken very kind words about me. I really do not know whether I deserve all that, but nevertheless, good words you have spoken, so I convey my enormous thanks for that. Coming to the topic of today, I'll take a few minutes to speak about Nani Palkhiwala. Now, I think that Nani Palkhiwala, for me and for the youth today, is the most topical role model. There are much more eminent people who can be role model. I would not get into a comparison between, say, Nani Palkhiwala or Mahatma Gandhi or Nani Palkhiwala and Swami Vivekanand ji and earlier. But in the contemporary period, I think Palkhiwala can be a befitting role model. Now I'll explain why. Palkhiwala hailed from a lower middle class family. He was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He came from very humble Parsi backgrounds in Bombay, now Mumbai. His father was running a laundry. Palkhiwala took tuitions by the time he reached 10th class to augment his money available to him. He had the handicap that he used to stammer. Wo haklate the. He could also not hold the pen straight. So all examinations from matriculation onwards till MA, he had to use a writer. A writer used to be provided to him. He could not, he had the writer's cramp, hold a pen properly. Now, despite these odds of lack of resources, monetary resources, his stammer, not holding a pen, he had a burning desire to excel. And it is said about him that there was a bookshop close to where he used to stay in South Bombay, Strand Book Depot, popular book depot. He used to go there, and from morning to evening, whenever he had a holiday, he would sit down in the shop and read the book in the bookshop because he could not afford to buy those books. And the owner of that shop, after some time, realized that this boy is genuinely sincere and capable. So he permitted that when the shop closes down on Saturday, Palkhiwala could carry that book home and return it the first thing on Monday morning. Now, that was the sincerity, the impression that he was able to create. He had enormous respect for his parents, for his teachers. Now, therefore, Palkhiwala, who, as I indicated, came from humble backgrounds and by sheer hard work rose to be one of the foremost, one of the topmost constitutional law lawyers in the country, who had an enormous practice. He had started his work, law work, as relating to taxation, in income tax. And he soon realized that there is no proper book on income tax, and therefore he wrote a book, a treatise on income tax, which is titled Law and Practice of Income Tax, and where he used the name of his senior, Jamshedji Kanga. So the book is known as Kanga and Palkhiwala's book on income tax. And till today, that is the most standard book on income tax. And his senior, Mr. Kanga, wrote in the preface that my name is there, but I have not contributed anything in this book. It is my junior, Nani Palkhiwala's work. And for some reason, out of sheer respect that he holds for me, he has included my name, but it is his work. Now, so I have spoken about, I will come to Keshwanand Bharti, we will talk about the Constitution, but a topmost lawyer and orator, well conversant and an expert of taxation and economic matters, philanthropist, social worker, conscience keeper, a senior manager or a management expert in the corporate world. He headed as chairman, Associated Cement Company or the ACC. And he was in the management of the topmost Tata companies. He was India's ambassador to United States. And I was talking to Mr. J.N. Dikshit, later who was National Security Advisor. And when I talked to him about Nani Palkhiwala, Dikshit said that I was his number 2 in Washington when he was the ambassador. And Dikshit, who was from Foreign Service, said that no other person in the chair of ambassador before or later had that rapport with the President of United States, which Palkhiwala had. And he was there hardly for 2 years. We will talk about it. Now, and he has written some extensive books. He had some remarkable qualities to illustrate his memory. Once he read a thing, it was imprinted in his mind. He never maintained any notes. He used to speak, discuss a case in Supreme Court or at a public meeting without consulting any notes, even a chit of paper. Now that was his memory. People recorded it to check back on the facts that he had narrated, and they found that all facts were correct. That was his memory. And he had absolutely humble person. Now, with this background, we come to Keshwanand Bharti. Now, Keshwanand Bharti, which was decided on 24th of April 1973 by a 13 judges bench of the Supreme Court. You would be aware that in Supreme Court, a single judge does not sit. They are all division benches of 2 judges, 3 judges, 5 judges and more. It is called a constitution bench. Now, this matter, because of the importance that it had, was heard by a bench of 13 judges. And the most important thing at the root of this case was the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution. You would be aware that Constitution is the basic document that we, the people of India, had made for ourselves, and it came into being in 1950. There was a Constituent Assembly that was set up after we became independent, and that took time. And on 26th of January 1950, this Constitution came into existence. Under the Constitution, the Parliament has been given power to amend the Constitution. So a question arose that a particular government which comes into power, which is elected by, say, the people for a period of 5 years after a general election, how much power does it have to amend that Constitution? Can it change the entire sort of recognition or identity of the Constitution? Because you must understand that the Parliament, then there is executive, and then there is judiciary. These are the 3 principal organs of the government, of the state. There is a Parliament, then there is a judiciary, and there is an executive. So the moot point, the basic point that was discussed in this case of Keshwan and Bharti was whether the parliament has omnipotent powers to totally give a new shape to the constitution. Now, this was a highly debated point, and this had come to the surface, sorry, because the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was a very powerful minister, Prime Minister, leader of a party. And at that point of time, she had absolute majority in the parliament. So she brought in sweeping changes. For example, she nationalized the banks. She abolished the privy purses. Her decisions in the field of education. Now, all these cases, one after the other, were challenged to test their legality. And you would be aware that Supreme Court is the final arbiter. It may not always be right, but then it is the ultimate, the final court in the country. And therefore, these matters came up before the Supreme Court. It was heard by a bench of 13 judges, headed by Justice A.N. Ray. And finally, the matter was heard for continuously 5 months, 5 days a week, except Saturday or Sunday when the Supreme Court is closed. From Monday to Friday, the matter used to be heard by the Supreme Court. And all concerned parties to this case were given an opportunity to have their say. And this case, if you go through the law reports, you'll find that all top legal brains then in India, they came and participated, they expressed their views one way or the other before the Supreme Court. Finally, on 24th of April 1973, when this matter was decided, without going into the intricacies of this case, I would tell you that what was decided was that Parliament has absolute power under Article 368 of the Constitution. In any act can be passed at a state level by the Assembly, by the state legislature, or if it is a union matter, then by the Parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And the portions of any act are known as sections. But insofar as Constitution is concerned, the word section is not used. What is said is article. You may have heard that Article 14, 15, 16, like that. So in this case, the Supreme Court held that Parliament has power under Article 368 to amend the Constitution. But it cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. And to illustrate, if the Constitution says that the life of a Lok Sabha is for 5 years, and after 5 years, general elections will take place. So at that time, if Mrs. Gandhi was in majority, or say today, it is Modi's government, he's in majority, he can't say that we amend the Constitution to say that instead of 5 years, we will be there for 10 years. So the basic structure cannot be changed. The Parliament can't say that, say, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh will be joined and they will become one state. You are changing the basic structure. The Parliament can't amend the Constitution to say that there will be 2 vice presidents of India or there will be no vice president of India. So, in other words, Palkhiwala argued, and it was accepted by the Parliament. And mind you, by a slender majority of 7 versus 6. And the 7th person in this, out of 13 judges, was one Justice H.R. Khanna. Now, H.R. Khanna's role to that extent was very crucial Because if he had kept quiet and he had not given his views, well, we may not be having a constitution today, because the parliament could well then have amended to say that the constitution that was brought out at that time of, say, Ambedkar has ceased to exist. So Palkhiwala said that there are certain basic features that cannot be changed. For example, you can't do away with Rajya Sabha. So I'm just giving some very basic examples. And till today, the jurists, without any exception, they thank and they give credit to Nani Palkhiwala that it was his brilliant advocacy that we were able to save the constitution. Constitution is a live document. Why live? Because it has seen number of amendments. The position has changed from what was there in 1950. So the people's representative, we the people, we have given ourselves this constitution. We can change it, but we cannot change the basic structure.
Great,
so
sir.
the credit to this goes to Palkhiwala, and in this he argued that the parliament's power to amend. So the question came as to what does the word amend means. Now, amend does not mean replace. For example, instead of president, you cannot say that it would be some other person, or prime minister would be known as some other person. Or the parliament cannot say that only people from this state or of this gender shall be prime minister. So I've given some very basic examples. So, and also it was said that the power of parliament has the power to amend the constitution, but this power is subject to judicial review by the Supreme Court or even High Court, which means that a person, a citizen who feels that a particular amendment is against the constitution, for which the legal word used is ultra-virus. If it is ultra-virus or unconstitutional, then he can challenge it before Supreme Court or High Court.
Great. Great, sir.
Now, I'll just very quickly finish this point.
Please, please.
One of the very eminent colleagues of Palkhiwala by the name P.P. Rao, later giving his tribute, he said that decision in this case, that is Keshwanand Bharti case, remains the hallmark of professional success of Palkhiwala. Now, with regard to this, I would just like to tell you and give you two famous quotes by Palkhiwala, which are pertinent in this regard, where Palkhiwala said that a law does not cease to be tyrannical because it has been passed by the elected representatives of the people. Put it in simpler words, that a law, just because it has been passed by the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and has received the president's assent, yet it can be tyrannical. That's one. And the second very profound statement made by Palkhiwala was, and listen, I would request you listen to this very carefully, and I'm quoting the words of Palkhiwala. He says that freedom cannot be inherited in the bloodstream. In other words, the blood which is flowing in our veins, the freedom does not run there. Each generation will have to fight for it, and then alone will it survive to be passed on to the next generation. What it meant was that just because our forefathers fought against the British and won us the freedom, it does not mean that we will continue to remain free for generations ahead. We will have to be vigilant, careful, and articulate to save this democracy and freedom. Thank
Great,
you.
sir.
Next.
Great, sir. My dear viewers, when our august guest has been articulating with so much profundity the fundamentals of that of Keshavanand Bharati case, I tell you one thing, because I just absolutely vouch for every single word that our distinguished guest has just now articulated, because I do recall reading an article of that of Mr. Santi Bhushan, another constitutional jurist and of course the former law minister. He himself said that even Indira Gandhi, when it came to arguing the case before the court of law, especially in the Supreme Court or in the Allahabad High Court, she never trusted anyone other than that of Sri Nani Palkiwala. This is what has been, articulated by Mr. Santi Bhushan. Mr. Santi Bhushan says that whereas I would draft her petition, but it was for Sri Nani Palkiwala to argue before the bench. Either it was in the Supreme Court or in the High Court. That was the overall proficiency or expertise of that of the great constitutional jurist. And when our very, very expert, global expert, the man, he himself, as we'll come to know just in this question, he himself is a man of high eminence and with a sort of depth, with sort of innate depth. And allegorically, he sought to enlighten all of us on the overall capabilities and the skills of that of the great constitutional jurist. Indeed, sir, we have been enlightened on the various aspects and dimensions of that of the holistic persona of the great constitutional jurist. Sir, I'm straightway coming to the next question, because you would appreciate we have several questions and time is very short. Sir, you held the position of a judge, advocate general in Indian Army. Could you kindly enlighten our viewers on your dual role as aforementioned? Your take on this, sir.
Thank you. Now, you must understand that I've just spoken about the parliament and you would be about our constitution, and you are aware that the constitution lists out certain fundamental rights. For example, equality before law, equal opportunities of law, right to life, right to freedom of speech, etc. So these are all contained in a portion of the Constitution of India, which is known as Part 3. Now in Part 3, after these listing these fundamental rights, in Hindi called Maulik Adhikar, there is an Article 32, which states that if a person or a citizen of India who feels that his fundamental rights are being denied, restricted, curtailed, can approach Supreme Court to get those rights enforced. So that is Article 32. Now, for the purpose of this question, what is important is the next article, that is 33. Now, 33 says that all those which are fundamental rights can be restricted or curtailed or abrogated by Parliament by making law with regard to defense personnel, military personnel, provided that this restriction or denial, if I can use the word, of fundamental rights to military persons can be only with two objectives. What are those two objectives? One objective is proper discharge of their duties, and secondly, maintenance of discipline amongst them. I'll give you an example. Like, military persons do not have a right to form a trade union. You understand? They have weapons, they have discipline, they have training. So they cannot be allowed to form a trade union lest the security of the country itself is imperiled. Or they cannot go openly, contest in election or give a speech in favor, whether say for the ruling party or the opposite party. They do not have right to freedom of writing or speech. They cannot publish an article or a book. They have to take permission. So in this manner, certain rights of military personnel have been restricted in accordance with the Article 33 of the Constitution by the Parliament by making law. Now, for military, discipline is very important. Very simply, it is said that the only difference between a soldier and a dacoit, both know how to use the weapon. The difference is discipline. A soldier has discipline, and which is not the case for a dacoit or a terrorist. Therefore, and in times of war, because military is prepared for war always. And in war, we say in military that in war, there is no prize for the runner-up. You can't say that I stood second, I got the silver medal. Understand? It is the security of the country. Therefore, for proper discipline, they need their own courts, which are known as court-martial. And military needs law people to advise the commanders on what law and how law is to be administered. And this work is done by a group of officers who belong to a department called Judge Advocate General. Now, it is a paradox. We say that they are neither judge nor advocate, but they do that work. A court-martial cannot proceed unless there is a judge advocate, a law qualified person who is eligible for enrollment as a lawyer by the Bar Council of India, has the same law degree. All eligibility is present to see that law is being properly administered. And his superior, in military we call it a commander, if he has any legal issue, and military has all sorts of legal issues. There are issues relating to constitution, military law, personnel, HR, relating to procurements, relating to human rights, relating to land, relating to pay and allowances, promotion, maintenance, adoption. So these are all intricate legal issues on which a commander who has the authority requires legal opinion to be given to him, advice. And that advice is rendered by the officers of this Judge Advocate General's department, in short, JAG's department. And the head of this department is called Judge Advocate General. So it is his department, JAG's department, which carries out this dual role, that when he goes in a court-martial, he takes oath and he performs duties relative to a judge. And when not doing that, when any file, any matter comes to him for his written or verbal advice, then he gives legal advice. And to that extent, he is performing the role of an advocate. Like an advocate is a legal advisor to his client. When you go and approach any lawyer for a particular matter, then he gives you legal advice, what you should do, what you should not do, and what you should do in what manner. So that is what the job is done. And this is the dual role. In the limited time available, I would only talk about this. And there have been historic trials by court-martial, for example, of Mangal Pandey, 1857, Bahadur Shah Zafar, then those trials in the Red Fort of Shahnawaz and other two people belonging to the Indian National Army of Subhash Chandra Bose. So in all those trials, the Judge Advocate General performed and carried out a very onerous duty. Thank you.
Great, sir. Great. Actually, I too intended to know, because I wanted to know about the implication. And of course, my viewers by now would have enlightened about the overall ramification and implication of that of the very designation Advocate General Judge, that is, hyphen judge. Both are being hyphenated. So its overall understanding, of course, now must have dawned on all of us. Sir, I'm straightway coming to the next question, very important. Since some of the questions I'm skipping because you already, covered all that in course of your responses. So I'm just coming to very important questions, sir. Naniye Palkiwala was also considered as one of the greatest public speakers even the best till date, when it comes to delivering a speech in the wake of union budget, then how would you like to evaluate Sri Nani Palkiwala as the public speaker speaking on union budget, keeping in view that he was, his main introduction or identity was that of being the constitutional jurist, not an economist? Please, your take, sir.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that during the days of Nehru, immediately after independence and before independence, there were two groups of economists, and they were known as the Bombay group of economists and the Delhi group of economists. Now, while Palkhiwala had his master's degree in English literature from Bombay University, and then he studied law at Government Law College, Churchgate, Bombay. But he had joined the chamber of Mr. Jamshedji Kanga, as I said, and he was a great taxation lawyer. And when he studied the taxation and argued those cases before Bombay High Court and later before the Supreme Court, matters relating to direct taxation and indirect taxation. Because of that, and secondly, because of his ardent belief, trust in free economy, he did not believe in socialist economy that was propagated by then Prime Minister Nehru. He believed in free economy, free enterprise. And then, after a few years, he was inducted by Mr. J.R.D. Tata in the board of the top Tata Group companies. And he was a member of their board. He was vice president, he was president, and he was chairman of certain companies, such big companies like Voltas, Tata Motors, ACC, Tata Steel. And he was chairman of Tata Consultancy, today known as TCS, for a number of years. And this imbibed in him a sound knowledge of economics. And therefore, he was a practical economist. Now, sometimes in mid-50s, he was invited by Forum of Free Enterprises to speak and explain to a common person as to what are the features of that year's budget. He readily agreed. He was quite young then, a young lawyer. And his speech was so much liked by the audience that in later years, gradually, his budget speeches came to be an annual feature. It was said that the finance minister of India used to present the budget in parliament, and Palkhiwala used to explain this to a common person and in a special meeting for chartered accountants in Bombay in open meetings. And these budget speeches used to attract such large crowd that there was no auditorium which could accommodate such large number of people, and therefore these speeches were heard in a cricket stadium, Brabourne Stadium of Cricket Club of India. Wankhede Stadium of Bombay till then had not been built. So more than 1 lakh of people used to come, sit down patiently to listen to Palkhiwala's explanation of that year's budget. And Palkhiwala used to prepare, take 4 or 5 days. He used to shut himself and used to study the budget and then speak without consulting a chit of paper. And he used to explain it in a language that a common person can understand. And in the front row there of that stadium, 1 hour, 2 hours before, celebrities like Dhirubhai Ambani or J.R.D. Tata or Mahindras or Godrej or Vice Chancellor of Bombay University, they used to come sit down for Mr. Palkhiwala to arrive and listen. Now, this was something quite extraordinary. Today, it is said that some of the top leaders, political leaders, for their speeches, the crowd is brought in buses and trucks. And here people used to willingly come, patiently wait, and in pin drop silence used to listen to Palkhiwala's explanation of that year's budget and to understand. And he would say that how is it people friendly? What impacts would it have on a common person, on the industry? And that way, his budget speeches were a legend.
Unequivocally so. Unequivocally so. My dear viewers, what our august guest was just trying to say, was just trying to, means propagate or articulate. I myself, means corroborated. I myself stand a living testimony of the same. I would visit Netherji Indoor Stadium in Calcutta to hear great, legendary Nani Palkhiwala delivering the speech. And, I would like to just recall, an incident before Palkhiwala would speak. His cousin, who was the chief editor-in-chief, as well as the managing director of The Statesman, because the Statesman, the newspaper of the elites in those days in Calcutta, they used to invite Sri Palkhiwala for budgetary speech. And the sort of introduction that was given by C.R. Irani, the then editor-in-chief, as well as the chairman of Statesman and cousin of Sri Nani Palkhiwala, he had said, here is a man, my dear viewers, I introduce you to a man who carries his intelligence as well as his, his confidence with a sense of ease. That was the word I learned from C.R. Irani while he introduced the great Nani Palkhiwala before the elites of Calcutta. My dear viewers, straight away I'm coming to the next question. And, absolutely. And one thing I would like to say, it is very important. Sir has just now said that even the men of such great stature, men of such high eminence, like, Dhirubhai Ambani ji, Tata, and all these great people, they would stand for hours together, sit for hours together before to hear great Palkhiwala, and absolutely in agreement with him, endorsing his observation. Today's politicians, they don't have that sort of capability to keep the audience absolutely in the state of fixation, absolutely in the state of ecstasy, or in such a mesmerizing ways, or in such mesmerizing mindset, the way great Palkhiwala's speech attracted the gems of, or the elite of elites of that particular time and era. Absolutely the agreement. Sir, I'm just coming to the straightway next question, sir, with a humble request to you that 3-4 questions have to be accommodated. Sir, you have written a great book on Sri Nani Palkhiwala, that is Be-Misal Palkhiwala, and also edited a book, Rethinking Palkhiwala. If you could kindly share your perspectives on both the books, of course, albeit in gist. Your take on this, please, sir.
Now, I'd just like to correct. I have not written 2. There are 3 books. And the first book is the most important. I hope your viewers can see. It is Nani Palkhiwala, a role model. Now, this book was published in 2004. Palkhiwala died in 2002, December. When I heard this news, I got onto this book. And this was released by the then President of India, President Kalam, when he came to Supreme Court to deliver the first Nani Palkhiwala Memorial Lecture. Great. Now, this book, subsequently, 5 editions have come of this book. And some of the greatest minds, because I thought I was a military officer, I had met Palkhiwala, but it was limited. So I approached very eminent people, the writers, authors, judges, politicians, social workers, and they contributed articles for this book. And this was released by the President of India when he delivered the first Palkhiwala Memorial Lecture. And this book, I have titled it A Role Model, like I have said. Now, about this book, very few quotes I would like to give it very quickly. One is by Justice Khanna. I told you that he was that judge who tilted the decision in Keshwanand Bharti case. Now, Justice Khanna has said that height of eloquence to which Palkhiwala rose, he is talking about Keshwanand Bharti case. So he says the height of eloquence to which Palkhiwala rose has seldom been equaled and never surpassed in the history of the Supreme Court. That was his level of advocacy, has seldom been equaled and never surpassed by anyone. Second, I would say Justice Krishna Iyer, he spoke about Krishna Palkhiwala, and he said to praise Palkhiwala is like painting lily to gild refined gold. If there is a refined gold and somebody says, I want to further refine it, it will be an attempt for that, and throw a perfume on the... You cannot throw perfume on jasmine flower because the flower itself has perfume. You cannot add its perfume. So these were the tributes paid to Palkhiwala. Now, another quality of Palkhiwala, before I come to second book, was a poem which was always kept by Palkhiwala by his bedside. And I'll read that poem to you that shows his humility. He has written, when I die, give my sight to the man who has never seen a sunrise. Give my heart to one who has known the agony of the heart. Give my blood to a youth pulled from the wreckage of a car so that he might live to see his grandchildren play. Let my kidneys drain the poison from another's body. Let my bones be used to make a crippled child walk. Burn what is left of me and scatter the ashes to the wind to let the flowers grow. And like that, it is very touching. And look at his sentiments. This was the poem. Well, this was the first book. Very quickly, I'll tell you that correspondent from the BBC approached me when this book was released. And he asked me a question which conveyed that he wanted to ask that how, as a military officer, was I talking about Palkhiwala, who was a constitutional lawyer and a corporate leader. So he says, what is common between you and Palkhiwala? This is what he asked. And what he meant was, how have I written? So I said, what was common between K. Asif and Mughal Azam? What was common between Attenborough and Gandhi? So for me, Palkhiwala is a role model. Well, this was the first book. Second book, Vivekanand ji has already spoken, Bemisal Palkhiwala. This I wanted to reach out to Hindi audience. And the third, I had for one complete year planned, organized Palkhiwala birth centenary from 2019 to 20. And at that time, all the speakers who came and spoke, some of the best brains in country, this was rethinking Palkhiwala. So I think for your library, for your personal use, try and get this book of Palkhiwala so that you are aware of his contribution, his thinking. That's all. Thank you.
Great. My dear viewers, indeed, just seeing the spectacular sight of the presentation of all those books, because you can well understand a military officer having nothing to do with that of a corporate lawyer or constitutional lawyer, because he himself articulated just now, he just communicated to all of us that very infrequently he had a meeting with great Palkhiwala. My dear viewers, I was one among the tens of thousands, an anonymous face who would visit to see the great man speak. And today, even my feeling, though I am not even the infinitesimal part of neither of the great Palkhiwala nor of that of our august guest, but nonetheless, the degree and the magnitude of my emotions and feelings for great Palkhiwala, having read two of his prominent books, We the People and We the Nation, that sort of feelings I have for the great man, that is something indescribable. I remember we the people, sir has been exhibiting, we the people and we the nation. Once, my dear viewer, before I switch over to the next question, quickly just a recap of a small conversation with that of Justice Ashok Kumar Ganguly of the Supreme Court. When he had retired and come to Calcutta, we had a discussion, and then when I brought the topic of great Nani Palkiwala, Justice Ashok Kumar Ganguly too concurred in the observation, as in as much as he too said that he himself is an ardent fan of great Palkiwala. Thank you, sir. Coming to the next question, great sir. Sir, this now, since you already mentioned an incident about Dixit Sahab pertaining to that of his being, subservient to that of great Palkiwala, coming to that, how would you define the role of Nani Palkiwala as an Indian ambassador to USA, especially his contribution as an ambassador during Janata Party regime? Sir, your quick take on this, please.
Now, you see, Palkiwala was not at all interested. He was most reluctant to go to US as an ambassador. Then Morarji Desai was prime minister. When Nani declined, then he sent his foreign minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, to Mumbai to go and request and persuade Palkiwala to accept this job. Palkiwala said, well, Keval Singh has just gone. He is India's ambassador there. So why do you want to change him? He has not even done 1 year. But then Vajpayee ji explained that Prime Minister feels that India's relations with US need to improve. They are at the rock bottom, and you are the most fit person to do this. And therefore, the nation requires that you go. When he said this, Palkiwala agreed, but he says, I will only go for 2 years. And in fact, he came back after 1 year, 10 months. That just shows that he was not interested in staying there unnecessarily. He says, I'll go, I will improve the relation. As far as his performance is concerned, Dixit has written that it was not merely that he interacted with the State Department or with the National Security Advisor. Palkiwala used to interact with the think tanks, with the universities, with the Senate, with the House of Representatives. And he succeeded in creating a wonderful image, closeness, proximity between India and United States. And of course, President Jimmy Carter, he developed a very close relationship with him and his mother. He respected her. And that was the turning point when United States and America started seeing each other as two great democracies who, despite their different perceptions, had number of things in common, and they needed to be together on the global platform. And therefore, to that extent, the credit to bring that turning point goes to Nani Palkiwala.
Fantastic, fantastic, sir. Indeed, we stand gobsmacked. And sir, let me be very respectful to you. Let me be very humbly conveying to you that I never had even the foggiest of an idea as to the way you will be illuminating our session with the bounty of information at your disposal, because you did an extensive and exhaustive research apart from yourself being a legal luminary, albeit in army, not in the legal field, but nevertheless after retirement you took care of Amity Business School, Miss Amity University in its law department, because you are instrumental behind institutionalizing the law department for Amity University. Today it gets, it gets crystallized. The sort of credential that you have is, it is absolutely becoming self-manifest. The sort of your contribution towards pioneering contribution towards bringing Amity University, its law department, into existence. Great, sir. Sir, even though I would have loved to ask you 2-3 questions, but because of the time constant, this is the last question coming to you, because Pramodji will be summing up our conversation in Hindi also. Sir, very, very important question now. 2 questions I would like to ask after this one, just 1 or 2 minutes. Sir, this is a very important question. Nani Palkiwala was conferred upon Padma Vibhushan, the second highest civilian award. Being a man who did so much research on great Palkiwala, don't you think he deserves Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award, for his pioneering contribution to save our constitutional democracy. Sir, before you come up with your answer, my dear viewers, this is my perception. And my perception is, of course, it's not quixotic or hypothetical. It is absolutely, it has a solid template. What I personally feel, while Jayaprakash Narayanji was a political crusader to unseat or unsettle, emergency at that point in time, Nani Palkiwala took the battle in the court of law. So both of them were equal crusaders. So when Bharat Ratna had gone in favor or had been conferred upon Jayaprakash Narayan, why not upon Sri Nani Palkiwala? Sir, your take on this, please.
I entirely agree with you, Vivekanand ji. No other person deserved Bharat Ratna as competently for distinguished service for the nation as Palkiwala. However, it was not given to him. Number of people at that time very, very eminent, including former presidents, Prime Minister Gujral, they all said that he deserved Bharat Ratna and much earlier. Perhaps the reason why it was not given, because as I said, Palkiwala believed in free economy, in enterprise, in enabling the youth. He did not believe in the shackles of socialism, and he did not believe in the populist measures which the government that time took, like abolition of privy purses, banks, coal industry, insurance industry, and he opposed the government. He fought against the government. Because of that, the government did not like that its decisions, and when Mrs. Indira Gandhi had majority in the parliament, those decisions being struck down by the Supreme Court only because of the advocacy of Palkiwala. So therefore, the socialist lobby or the sphere of the Congress party then did not favor Palkiwala, and also used to bring out the pitfalls, shortcomings, and deficiencies every year in the budget. And on one hand, you had a person like Morarji Desai, who had very fixed ideas. There was no flexibility there. So they thought that he is an opponent of the government. And that's why the government was slow, the government was reluctant, and they gave him even Padma Vibhushan, which is the second highest, at a much later stage in his life, in 1996, when Palkiwala by 1953-55 had come to be recognized as a major force in the Supreme Court, in the economy. So for more than 30 years, more than 3 decades, the government dilly-dallied, they sort of procrastinated, and finally they gave him Padma Vibhushan, whereas he richly deserved Bharat Ratna, as Vivekanand ji has said, and I entirely agree with him.
Great, sir. My dear viewers, of course, it is for, as our honored guest says, I'm absolutely, in conformity with his statement. And I do personally feel, rather staunchly feel, that such a man of such a high stature, who is a role model for the nation in contemporary times, absolutely in agreement with our distinguished guest, done unequivocally, he deserves to be conferred upon the Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award, especially when Sri Narendra Modi ji is presiding over the destiny of India, who himself is a votary of that of free enterprise, or that of, you can say, the lessons, I wouldn't say laissez-faire, but an extreme form of capitalism. So of course, since he favors the viewpoint or perspectives of Nani Palkiwala, it is incumbent on his part to ponder it, to reconsider awarding Bharat Ratna to Sri Nani Palkiwala. My dear viewers, indeed, we have had a very great, comprehensive, and a holistic discussion today, for which I have no words to say apart from expressing my heartfelt thanks to our very, very distinguished guest. I just recall one very important incident, which is incorporated in We the People, when Sri Nani Palkiwala, after fighting the case of Indira Gandhi in Allahabad High Court. When he went to Indira Gandhi's residence, Prime Minister's residence, informed her all about the case, means updated her about the case, and was returning to Mumbai. In plane, he purportedly met a man who came rushing to him to know about the details of the case. And then he informed him that one of the saints he met in Himalaya had some sort of prognosis, had prognosticated about the bad days of India which were ahead. And he said that it would start from such and such date and it would conclude on such and such date. Next day, Sri Palkiwala writes in We the People, when he opened the newspaper, emergency was imposed upon the country. And as the man said, as the man prophesied, in similar way, the emergency was concluded after 2 years and 21 months. So this is something amazing. Even the man of Palkiwalaji's stature had corroborated these facts, that there is at least some genuinity or authenticity to that of astrology. My dear viewers, before I invite Pramodji, just to make an announcement, our next Saturday, we are going to have a comprehensive discussion on Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, India's most loved Prime Minister and most statesman Prime Minister, whom Sri Nani Palkiwala admired a lot. When Atalji became the Prime Minister, Nani Palkiwalaji had given a clarion call to all the MPs then, best man has been appointed as the Prime Minister. All of you, all the MPs cutting across the party line, they're all ideologies, they all should vote in favor of Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And we have invited the Vice Chancellor of Atal Bihari Vajpayee University, Sri Arun Vajpayee ji, to speak on great Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now it is a time for Sri Pramodji to sum up our very, very electrifying conversation in Hindi. Pramodji, please. आदरणीय प्रमोद जी।
जी नमस्कार।
नमस्कार।
आज के इस कार्यक्रम में आदरणीय श्री मेजर जनरल साहब ने जितनी गंभीरता से और जितनी गहराई से हमारे देश के एक अनपैरेलल अद्वितीय विद्वान और राष्ट्र के प्रति समर्पित नानी पालकीवाला के विषय में हमें जानकारी, हमारे श्रोताओं को यह भी बताया वो कितने हम्बल बैकग्राउंड के थे और उन्होंने अपने अध्ययन और अध्यावसायिता को किस प्रकार से एक पुस्तक की दुकानों में जाकर के पूरा। बाद के दिनों में नानी पालकीवाला ने प्रत्येक समय में अपनी बौद्धिकता, अपने समर्पण और अपने ज्ञान के जरिए संपूर्ण भारतवर्ष को, जो किसी सोशलिज्म के चक्कर में पड़कर कितनी बुरी तरह से रास्ता भटक गया था, उस रास्ते से उठा करके देश को सही रास्ते पर लाने में जो इन्होंने परिश्रम किया, और इनको सुनने के लिए पूरा वानखेड़े स्टेडियम की तरफ मुंबई का पूरा परिसर भरा होता था। हम सभी अपने विद्यार्थी जीवन में थे और विद्यार्थी जीवन में अखबारों के माध्यम से और बाद के दिनों में कई चैनलों पर अद्वितीय विद्वान नानी पालकीवाला जी को सुना था और सुप्रीम कोर्ट में उनकी धमक को भी देखा था। जब वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट किसी केस को लेके जाते थे तो अखबारों में 4-4 कॉलम का समाचार होता था कि आज के इस केस को नानी पालकीवाला डील कर रहे हैं, तो लोग ये समझ जाते थे कि आज कुछ अद्भुत होने वाला है। और इतना ही नहीं, वो इतने हम्बल थे, इतने जिद पर अड़ के राष्ट्र के खिलाफ खड़े किसी व्यक्ति को बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते। और इसीलिए जब हमारे अद्वितीय प्राइम मिनिस्टर अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी विदेश मंत्री रहते हुए जब निवेदन करने गए तो मुझे तो कभी रोमांच हो जाता है कि आज के समय के लोग एक पद पाने के लिए गणेश परिक्रमा करते हैं, और वो नानी पालकी वाला जी को जाके बोले कि आप यूएस का एम्बेसडर बन जाइए। उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं भाई, वो जो आदमी है वो तो अच्छा आदमी है, उससे काम लो, आप मुझे क्यों भेज रहे हो? तो इन्होंने कहा नहीं, देश की जरूरत है, देश के लोग जाते हैं। तो इन्होंने अपनी शर्तों पर 2 साल का समय दिया और 1.5 साल में कहा कि अब तुम्हारा संबंध सुधर गया है, अब वापस आ रहे हैं। यानी एक व्यक्तित्व जिसे पूर्णता में सनातन कहता है, पूर्णमिदः पूर्णमुदम् पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, ये व्यक्तित्व है जिसने कभी भी अपनी दीनता का, किसने अपनी कमजोरी का, किसने अपनी अल्पता का, अल्पता का कभी रोना नहीं रोया, और पूरी ताकत के साथ इस राष्ट्र के पुनरुत्थान और इस राष्ट्र के विकास की बात करते हैं। और जिस प्रकार से हमारे मेजर जनरल साहब नरेंद्र साहब ने हमें इस ज्ञान से अनुप्लावित किया और आपने 3 पुस्तकें लिखी, मैं तो वंचित रह गया हूँ आपके पुस्तक का पाठक बनने के लिए। मैं ढूंढूंगा कि कहाँ मिलता है और मैं फिर चाहूंगा कि मैं उसे पढ़ूं और राष्ट्र को उसका लाभ मिले। आपकी पुस्तक की 5 एडिशन आई है। मैंने विवेकानंद जी की जितनी लेखनी है मैंने बहुत सुंदर से पढ़ी है। हालांकि विवेकानंद जी की तरह आंग्ल भाषा का ज्ञान ईश्वर ने मुझे नहीं दिया है, लेकिन फिर भी मैं इस बात को इंडोर्स करता हूँ कि ये सारस्वत के धनी व्यक्तित्व हैं और इन्होंने बहुत ही अच्छे ढंग से चीजों को लिखा है। तो ऐसी स्थिति को हम और आप जब देखते हैं, समझते हैं, तो मन को एक भरोसा होता है, मन के अंदर एक विश्वास जगता है और राष्ट्र में एक पॉजिटिविटी जाती है कि हम ऐसे देश के लोग हैं जहां परंपरा से, जहां बौद्धिकता को, जहां ज्ञान को, जहां उसके समर्पण को लोगों ने हाथों हाथ लिया है, और पहले भी लिया था, आज भी ले रहे हैं और आने वाले सदियों तक लेते रहेंगे। इसलिए ये भरोसा ऐसे महापुरुषों के लिए नमन करने का समय है, उन्हें प्रणाम करने का समय है। और मैं भी इस बात से सहमत हूँ आप दोनों महापुरुषों के द्वारा कही गई बातों से कि ऐसे व्यक्तित्व को चिरजीवी बनाने के लिए भारत की ओर से भारत रत्न जरूर दिया जाना चाहिए। मैं आपसे और आदरणीय विवेकानंद जी की बातों से अपनी सहमति व्यक्त करता हूँ। न केवल इतनी बात, मैं तो ये कहता हूँ कि नानी ये पालकी वाला जी के इस पूरे समग्रता को समझना और उनके साथ रहना, इन दोनों ही स्थितियों में एक बहुत ही अच्छी बात है कि आने वाले युवाओं को कम से कम वैधानिकी के क्षेत्र में जो विधिक का अध्ययन कर रहे हैं, जो उसकी अत्यावश्यकता में है, जहाँ नई मॉडर्निटी आई है, जहाँ की चीजों को समझने की व्यवस्था आई है, उन बच्चों तक नानी पालकी वाला की इस कमिटमेंट का, इस ऊर्जा का संचार अवश्य होना चाहिए और देश के दूसरे बच्चों को भी ये बात बताई जानी चाहिए। इसीलिए हमारे कोर्स की किताब में भी नानी पालकी वाला की जीवनी को अभी मैं एचआरडी मिनिस्टर धर्मेंद्र प्रधान जी को एक पत्र लिखकर विवेकानंद जी कहें कि उनकी जीवनी को देश के लोगों को पढ़ाना चाहिए।
बहुत अच्छा विचार है।
आज के इस सुंदर वैचारिक और शास्त्रार्थ के इस सुंदर से एपिसोड में हम आप जितनी तन्मयता से इनको सुने, आपके लिए यह एक ऐतिहासिक साक्ष्य रूप में एजुकेशन पे चर्चा पर मौजूद है। मेरा निवेदन होगा कि आप सभी इस एपिसोड से अपने ज्ञानवर्धन का लाभ लें। आज के इस सत्र के लिए बस इतना ही। आदरणीय विवेकानंद जी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आदरणीय मेजर जनरल साहब को सादर प्रणाम, सैल्यूट। भारत माता की सेवा करने के लिए आपका चरण स्पर्श। आप ऐसे ही कालजयी पुस्तकों का निर्माण करते रहें और मेरा निवेदन होगा कि हमारे पुस्तकालय के लिए आप अपने पुस्तक कहाँ उपलब्ध होंगे ये हमें आप हमको बता दीजिए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आज मैं अपनी बात
बहुत many thanks, Pramod ji. Thanks a lot. And indeed, we salute, we offer our reverential salutation to our very distinguished guest today, respected Major General Sri Nilendra Kumar ji, for giving us his invaluable time for a very intellectually scintillating interaction with me on this august platform of Education Pe Charcha. My dear viewers, I am also thankful to see Pramod ji for his wonderful, summation of today's very electrifying conversation. And just to reiterate my observation pertaining to our next guest, that too is because of Pramod ji's, very important recommendation. We have invited Sri Arun Kumar Bajpai ji, the Vice Chancellor of Atal Bihari Vajpayee University of Chhattisgarh, to interact with me on Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee on this upcoming Saturday, that is on 20th of May at the same time at 7 p.m. And I salute all my esteemed viewers for being a part and for their patronage, for their blessings, for their being an integral part of this unique bandwagon of Education Pe Charcha. Thank